Hey everyone, and welcome back to Learn English Fluently Academy. Today, we're diving into something really fun and useful for enhancing your understanding of English: analogies. You've probably heard analogies in conversations, movies, books, or even during casual discussions. But have you ever wondered exactly what they are and how you can use them to sound more fluent and natural in English? Well, today is your lucky day. We'll take a closer look at analogies, what they are, how they work, and how to use them in real-life conversations. By the end of this lesson, you'll not only understand analogies, but will also be able to use them to make your speech and writing much more interesting. Ready to get started? Let's go. What are analogies? Before we get into specific examples, let's first break down what an analogy is. An analogy is simply a comparison between two things to highlight their similarities. It helps explain something complex by comparing it to something familiar. Think of it as a way to bridge the gap between what we know and what we don't know. For example, when you say, "Life is like a box of chocolates," you're comparing life to a box of chocolates to explain that life is full of surprises. Just like you never know what chocolate you're going to get. Analogies are powerful because they create a visual connection in your mind, making abstract ideas easier to understand. Now let's explore some of the types of analogies and how they work. Let's start with the simplest types of analogies. The most basic analogy structure compares two things with a clear and direct relationship. For example, cat is to kitten as dog is to puppy. Here, we're comparing the relationship between a cat and its kitten to the relationship between a dog and its puppy. It's showing that just as a kitten is a young cat, a puppy is a young dog. Another example might be, teacher is to student as doctor is to patient. This analogy shows the relationship between a teacher and a student. In the same way, it shows the relationship between a doctor and a patient. Both analogies compare a professional to the person they help or guide. As you can see, these types of analogies are straightforward and you can easily understand them by looking at the relationships between the words. So when you're using analogies, you're making these connections to explain ideas, relationships, or concepts more clearly. Now let's think about how analogies work in real-life conversations. Imagine you're explaining something and you want to make it easier for the other person to understand. You might use an analogy like this. Understanding computer programming is like learning to play an instrument. At first, it seems difficult, but with practice, it gets easier. In this case, you're comparing the process of learning programming to learning an instrument, suggesting that both require time and practice to master. It gives the listener a familiar point of reference to understand something that might seem complicated at first. Here's another example. Managing a team is like being a coach of a sports team. You need to motivate everyone, assign roles, and work together to reach a common goal. This analogy helps someone unfamiliar with managing a team understand the concept of leadership by comparing it to the role of a coach, which is a situation many people are familiar with. Section 4, using analogies to describe emotions. Analogies aren't just useful for explaining physical objects or processes. They're also fantastic for describing emotions. So let's see how analogies can help us express feelings in a more creative and vivid way. Imagine someone is feeling overwhelmed by work. "I feel like I'm juggling too many balls at once." This analogy compares the feeling of being overwhelmed to juggling multiple balls. It helps the listener immediately understand the feeling of stress and chaos. Let's take a look at another emotion. "It felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders when I finished my presentation." Here, the analogy of a weight being lifted is used to describe the relief someone feels after completing a task. It paints a clear picture and makes the emotion more tangible. You can use analogies like these to not only describe emotions but also make your language more colorful and expressive. Section 5. Creative analogies. Now that you're getting the hang of analogies, let's take it up a notch with some creative and complex ones. These types of analogies are often used in literature or to explain abstract concepts, but they can also be super helpful in daily conversations. Let's start with an abstract analogy. Her mind is a garden and her thoughts are the seeds she plants. This analogy compares a person's mind to a garden, suggesting that the thoughts you have are like the seeds that grow into something. Whether it's positive or negative, it's a beautiful way of saying that what we think influences how we feel or how we act. Here's another one. Navigating life is like sailing a ship. You can't control the wind, but you can adjust the sails. This analogy conveys the idea that in life, we can't control everything that happens to us, but we can choose how to respond. It's a lovely metaphorical way of saying we are in control of our reactions. Section 6. How to make your own analogies. Now that you're familiar with analogies, you might be wondering how you can create your own. Don't worry, I've got you covered. Identify the concept you want to explain. Find something that shares similar qualities or relationships. Step number 3, compare them using like or as. If you want to explain the idea of teamwork, you could compare it to something people are familiar with. For example, teamwork is like a symphony orchestra. Each musician plays their part to create something beautiful together. See how we use the orchestra analogy to show that in a team, everyone plays a role to contribute to a bigger picture? Section 7. Practice makes perfect. Now it's your turn. Let's practice creating analogies together. I'll give you a few prompts and you try to think of a comparison. Ready? Let's go. Learning a new language is like. Life in a big city is like. Pause for a moment and think of your own answers. Don't worry if they're not perfect. What matters is you're using your creativity to come up with comparisons that make sense and paint a clear picture. Section 8. Analogies in writing and speaking. You'll often find analogies in both writing and speaking. In writing, they can add depth and creativity to your work. For example, her smile was like sunshine breaking through the clouds. This analogy makes the description of her smile more vibrant and visual. In speaking, analogies can help you explain things quickly and clearly without overcomplicating them. If someone asks you how to cook a particular dish, you could say, making spaghetti is like building a house. First, you gather the ingredients, like you would collect materials, then you follow the steps, layer by layer until you have finished the product. And there you have it. Analogies are a fantastic way to explain, describe, and clarify concepts in a fun and creative way. I hope this lesson has helped you understand how to use analogies to communicate more effectively in English. Remember, analogies make ideas easier to grasp and they add color and life to your conversations. The more you practice, the better you'll get at creating and understanding them. So try using them in your daily conversations and you'll be amazed at how they make things more exciting. If you enjoyed this lesson, don't forget to like and subscribe. Keep practicing and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!